They opened a Boston dumpster and found the upper half of a young woman, just the upper half. The rest of her was gone. It has never been found. Her name was Karina Holmer, 20 years old, a Swedish nanny who came to America to see the world. The night before, she was dancing in a downtown club. 30 hours later, half of her was in the trash, and the other half had simply vanished. To understand how this happened, you have to start somewhere gentler. In a small town called Skillingaryd in southern Sweden. That is where Karina Holmer grew up. The people who knew her describe an ordinary, good kid. She joined the Scouts when she was 8. She loved animals. She loved the idea of travel, of going somewhere far away and seeing what the rest of the world looked like. She was the kind of young woman who was just as comfortable in a flannel shirt and jeans as she was dressed up for a night out. Friends called her simply a great kid. In the mid-90s, an au pair program offered a way out of a small town and into America. You lived with a family, you looked after their children, and in exchange, you got a year on the other side of the ocean. There was just one problem. It cost money Karina did not have, and then she won it. About $1,500 in a lottery, enough to pay her way across the Atlantic. In March of 1996, Karina Holmer flew to Massachusetts to start her American year. She was placed with a family in Dover, an affluent, leafy suburb about 25 miles southwest of Boston. She cared for 2 young children during the week. Her employers were a photographer named Frank Rapp and a painter named Susan Nichter. On the weekends, Karina was given the keys to Rapp's photography studio in South Boston, a place of her own in the city. She had been in the country for about 4 months. A girl from a small Swedish town, 20 years old, finally living in a big American city. And on a warm Friday night in late June, she did exactly what a 20-year-old does. She went out. It was Friday, the 21st of June, 1996. The longest day of the year. Karina and her friends went to a nightclub called Zanzibar on Boylston Place, right next to Boston Common. It was a popular spot, packed and loud, the kind of place you go to celebrate the start of summer. What happened inside the club is ordinary. She danced, she drank. At some point in the night, she and her friends got separated. That happens. People drift apart in a crowded club and assume they will find each other again. But Karina did not find them again. The last confirmed sighting of Karina Holmer alive comes at around 3:20 in the morning. Saturday now, the 22nd. She is on the street outside, near the corner of Tremont Street and Boylston Place. The club is emptying out. The city is at that strange thin hour where the night people are going home and the day has not started yet. And then nothing, no phone call, no taxi receipt. No witness who can say for certain where she went or who she went with. A 20-year-old steps off a Boston sidewalk at 3 in the morning, and the trail simply ends. She was reported missing later that same day. But by then, it was already far, far too late. Because somewhere in the hours after she left that street corner, Karina Holmer met whoever killed her. And what they did to her afterward is the part of this case that has haunted Boston for 30 years. Sunday, June 23rd, the afternoon after she went missing. On Boylston Street in the Fenway neighborhood, someone goes to throw something into a dumpster. Inside, they find a green trash bag. And inside the bag is the upper half of a human body. It is Karina. She has been dead only hours. And the way her body has been treated is what turns a tragedy into one of the most infamous cases in the city's history. She had been strangled. That was the cause of death. But she had also been cut completely in half, at the waist, not hacked, not butchered. Cut, investigators would later note that the body had been divided with a single, clean separation of the spine. One cut. The work of someone who was not panicking, and who may have known exactly what they were doing. And here is the detail that no one in Boston has ever been able to shake. They found her upper half. They never found the rest. The lower half of Karina Holmer's body was never recovered. Not that week, not that year, not in the 30 years since. Think about what that means. A killer didn't just murder a young woman. They took her apart, disposed of one half in a public dumpster, where it was certain to be found, and made the other half disappear so completely that it has eluded every search for 3 decades. Why split the body at all? Why leave one half where anyone could find it, and hide the other half where no one ever could? Those questions sat at the center of the investigation from the very first day. And the answers have never come. The case landed with the Boston Police Homicide Unit, and from the outside it looked like it should be solvable. This was not a body dumped in the woods. It was the center of a major American city in the summer. There were clubs full of witnesses. There were streets full of cameras and cars and people. Investigators threw everything at it. Over 300 witnesses were interviewed. They worked the club, the crowd, the friends, the family she worked for. They pulled in the FBI's behavioral science unit, the profilers, to try to understand the kind of person who could do this. And almost immediately they ran into the first wall. There was no crime scene. Think about what it takes to strangle someone and cut them in half. That is not something you do on a sidewalk. It needs privacy. It needs space. It needs time and tools and somewhere to clean up afterward. Somewhere in Boston, there was a place where this happened. Police never found it. To this day, no one knows where Karina Holmer was actually killed. So the detectives did what detectives do. They built a list of people who had been near her in those final hours. And one by one, they started knocking on doors. A man she had been seen with outside the club, a boyfriend. The people in her orbit. One of those names would turn into the strangest thread in the entire case. A man with a very particular look who was seen with Karina that night, and who, a year later, would be dead by his own hand. The man was hard to miss. He was in his 40s. He was often seen around downtown with a large white dog at his side, and people remembered him in part because of that dog. His name was Herb Whitten, and witnesses placed him talking to Karina near the club that night. An older man seen with a young woman in the last window of time anyone saw her alive. For investigators, that is exactly the kind of lead you chase hard, and they did. But then the timeline got in the way. That same night, at around 3:30 in the morning, Herb Whitten had been pulled over and issued a speeding ticket. A time-stamped record written by a police officer, putting him somewhere other than where Karina disappeared. The ticket became his alibi, and it held. He was cleared. And here is where the case turns genuinely haunting. About a year later, Herb Whitten took his own life. For a case this dark, that is the kind of detail the human mind wants to grab onto. A man questioned in a famous murder, dead within a year, but wanting a connection is not the same as having one. There was no evidence tying Herb Whitten to Karina's death. His alibi was real, and his death, however tragic, answered nothing. He was not the only one. Karina had reportedly dated a Boston police officer. He was looked at too. So were others in her circle, and one after another the same thing kept happening. They were questioned, they were checked, and they were let go. Police concluded that none of them were the person they were looking for. Every promising thread pulled led back to nothing, which left investigators staring at the hardest possibility of all. That the person who did this was someone whose name was never on any list, and that the precision of the crime was a message in itself. So come back to the body, because in a case with no crime scene, no weapon, and no surviving suspect, the body is almost all the evidence there is, and the body was trying to say something. Karina was strangled first, then she was divided cleanly at the waist. Whoever did it then split the two halves apart in the most deliberate way imaginable. One half was placed in a dumpster in a busy neighborhood where it was guaranteed to be discovered fast. The other half was hidden so well that it has defeated 30 years of searching. That is not the behavior of someone in a blind panic. A panicked killer hides everything, or dumps everything, in one frightened rush. This was something else. This was a choice, to show the city one half of her, and to deny it the other half forever. Some have wondered whether the lower half was hidden, because it carried evidence the killer could not afford to have found. Others have focused on the clean separation itself, the suggestion that this was someone with anatomical knowledge, or at least a steady hand and the right tool. The FBI's profilers were brought in for exactly this reason. But a profile is not a name, and that is the wall this case keeps hitting. There is enough here to disturb you for the rest of your life, and not enough to convict a single human being. No crime scene, no murder weapon recovered, half a victim, and a list of suspects who all walked away. Years passed. The witnesses scattered. The leads went cold. And in the city of Boston, the case of the Swedish nanny became something people talked about in lowered voices. A story that everyone half remembered, and no one could finish. But Boston did not let go. Cases like this do not stay buried, not entirely, because there are always people who refuse to let the file close. The Boston Police Cold Case Squad kept Karina's name on its boards. Decades after the murder, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office moved to reopen and re-examine the case. New eyes, new techniques. The hope that something logged in 1996 might mean something different in the age of modern forensics. And on the 25th anniversary of her death, in 2021, the police did something they rarely do for a case this old. They went back to the public. They asked openly for anyone with information to come forward. A quarter of a century later, they were still asking the same question. Who killed Karina Holmer? The Boston Globe reinvestigated the whole case for that anniversary, walking back through every detail. And the conclusion was the same one the city had been living with for decades. No arrest, no answer. Whoever killed Karina has, so far, gotten away with it completely. They have never been named. They have never slipped. Whatever they know about that night, and about where the rest of her was hidden, they have kept to themselves for 30 years. It is easy, with a case like this, to let the horror become the whole story, the dumpster, the clean cut, the missing half. Those are the details that make people remember Karina Holmer, and those are exactly the details that erase her, because for years, she was not a person. She was a phrase, the Swedish nanny, a crime, not a girl. But she was a girl. She was 20 years old. She grew up in a small town, joined the Scouts at 8, loved animals, and won a lottery so she could see the world. She crossed an ocean by herself. She had a father and a sister waiting in Sweden who would spend the rest of their lives broken by a phone call. She was, as the people who knew her kept saying, just a great kid. Somewhere out there, the answer still exists. Someone knows where the rest of Karina is. Someone knows what happened on that street corner at 3 in the morning. The file in Boston is still open. The question is still on the table. After 30 years, it has never once been closed. Who killed Karina Holmer? And where is the rest of her? 2 questions, 1 city, and a young woman who came to America to see the world and never got to go home.